When the sun escaped from the day, taking none of its heat with it, I went down to the river to witness the burning of bodies in the Ganga. In the hopes of achieving moksha, the Hindu belief in which when you die you are finally released from the cycle of rebirth, men prepare the dead for their final ritual, anointing the bodies with incense before laying them in the pyre. This fire burns day and night, the smoke always rising, the embers forever glowing orange and bright. Again, I sat on the steps watching the sacred rite in silence. Bells clanged in the darkness as the dead were ushered from this world to the next. A young man, a Dalit by caste, considered an untouchable, sat down beside me. He wore a charcoal t-shirt, a pair of faded blue jeans and sneakers, dirty laces but clean soles. His hair was long, or at least longer than the beard he was trying to grow, which was no more than a few straight patches of hair, barely a stubble, barely a shadow that would ever see 5 o'clock. Handsome and gregarious, he struck up a conversation by offering a cup of tea, which I wearily took, knowing there was a chance that I was gazing into the source from which it was made. He assured me that it was not, while also proclaiming that it was safe to drink from the Ganga, citing that environmental scientists who had come to test these waters were amazed by how clean they were. They could not believe it, and frankly, neither could I. As he sipped his tea, he spoke of the happiness that I still knew so little about. He spoke about this happiness as if he knew no other emotion, as if there was no other emotion. And for him, there was no reason to be happy, not to be happy. He was born from these waters, and here he will die, just as his father before him and his children after. And if happiness was to be found in any other place in Varanasi, he would not care to find it. For the here was happiness. For a moment, I wondered when it was, let's keep going. For a moment, I wondered when it is, if it is, that I will ever find happiness. So little I knew of happiness, as reluctant to drink from its well as I was from the Ganges, that even if I were to find it, how would I know what it was? Silence descended upon the city, but the fires never faded. They simply smoldered, a distant glow, a searing reminder that life, in all its forms, burns on. In the subdued darkness we parted ways, he into the heart of the city, and I still on the surface. I walked home, tracing the course of the river, tiptoeing among stones and sleeping, standing cows, careful not to slip or stumble upon what lay waste in these alleys. Now I could have been put off by this filth, but this refuse was no different from the pollution that I let fill my heart for so many years. Who was I to judge a country when I treated the country of my soul the very same way? Besides, here spirituality is something so intimate that it shares the same space as the air that fills my lungs, and with each breath, I began to understand that it will take lifetimes to understand the meaning of happiness, to understand the meaning of life. And as I climbed up the steep steps of the Ghat, I began to quietly accept happiness for what it is, an ephemerality, never meant to last for more than a moment. Goa in the beginning of May is so very quiet, except for the heat that screams in the sun and even in the shade. As the sun hid behind clouds, I walked along the stretch of sand, the only border between India and the Arabian Sea. Gone now were the tourists, and the beaches were almost empty save for stray dogs, sacred cows, and every now and again a white and wild horse. Young Indian men, bare of torso, shuffled their feet, creating the temporary boundaries of a cricket pitch. Oh my God. It's like I'm learning to speak English for the first time. Creating the temporary boundaries of a cricket pitch. Then they bowled to one another with tennis balls. In between pitches, they stumbled into the ocean and returned cool and covered in sand to play another round. The air was thick with salt, and the only way to tell time was by the rising and falling of the tides. In this way, an eternity passes in a day. In Goa, I began to embrace the slowness of this journey, in which schedules barely existed and days of the week no longer mattered. Hours became arbitrary. Days passed, and I neither mourned their passage nor cared where they went. In the white heat of the mornings, I drank French press coffee at a table that faced the sea. As if desperate to hold on to even more heat, I clasped the cup in both hands and wrapped my fingers underneath the porcelain. What breeze there was slowed and stopped before the noonday sun. Hungry, always hungry. I ordered a breakfast that raised the bar for all other breakfasts to come. Crepes with lime, sprinkles of cinnamon, and drizzled with honey. The crepes were both thick and thin, as if they had ideas of becoming pancakes, and then thought better of it. The lime had just been plucked from nearby trees, the cinnamon grated into tiny pebbles, small stones of spice, and the honey so sweet that it felt like syrup onto the plate. Since arriving in these lands, I have learned that the food of India is a journey in itself. It is in the eating of these meals, using my thumb as a fork, my fingers as a spoon, that I learned what it is like to fall in love again, slowly now, for there is no rush. Each piece of naan bread, each leaf of mint, each bite of vegetable biryani, and every sip of lime soda was a tumble towards ecstasy, and these combination of ingredients forever changed the way a lemon, a tomato, and even a single grain of rice was seen. As I took one last bite of crepe, I thought to myself that if food was not to be part of this journey, I might not have ever left. For what better way is there to connect with the world than to share meals, to share thoughts, and to share prayers? And I offered my thanks to whichever gods might hear them. For what remained of the week, I spent the early and late hours of the day watching waves crash onto the shore. From dry land, they were docile, crusting and undulating in the steady rhythms, but swimming in the currents, the water became what it is, a force of nature, a power intoxicating. Emerging from the ocean, I sat wet without a towel, gathering handfuls of sand before letting them slip back into the sea, thinking only of this. How I wish on this journey to go from the rock that I try so very hard to be into a single grain of sand. The water rushed in, carrying away my wishes. Maybe they will one day all come true. At night, I went by myself back to the sands and waited for the stars to appear in clusters and constellations. Everywhere there was darkness. Everywhere there was light. And although it was past midnight, I could not sleep, awake with the awareness that I was on the wrong side of the sea, and for it was the lands across the ocean that called my name. Soon enough, there I would be, but for now I was here. For now I was in India. Eventually sleep did arrive, ridden on the backs of waves that roared and whispered only this. This is India, madame. Nothing is impossible. To Kate I returned for one last night, and we shared one last meal. Here she was to stay, and I to travel westward, where this pilgrimage was to begin in earnest. Entering India, I knew nothing. Leaving India, I knew nothing. Sorry, let me start again. I'm sorry, I read too fast, I think it is. Entering India, I knew nothing. Leaving, I knew nothing. Still, and perhaps that is the way it was meant to stay. A mystery, one of the few left, and no more. I hope you guys are enjoying I Once Was a Pilgrim. I'm going to keep on reading to you. Next is Lebanon, a place that I hold so very dear in my heart. See you around, guys.